Good afternoon. I would love to welcome everyone to the Geospatial Professional Network webinar series. This is Leadership and Management series. I am Trisha Brush, and I am the director of LOJIC, and coming to you from Louisville, Kentucky, as well as our presenter today, Chris Alldredge. This is the Geography of a Law. It is my pleasure to introduce Chris. I have the pleasure of actually working with Chris on a daily basis, and he was telling me about his interest in the topic today. And I thought, wow, what a great presentation and webinar for the GPN. Chris has been in GIS for 22 years. He is been doing GIS analytics, administration, project management, and cross-discipline networking. He delivers efficient solutions and has done that for federal, state, and local government agencies across a range of many initiatives. He has looked at national security, critical infrastructure protection, law enforcement, and hazard mitigation. He has been an active member of CAMP, the Kentucky Association of Mapping Professionals, since 2011, and he had modernized actual voting for CAMP, and which really led to many modernized efforts. I really appreciate that. Back in the day, Chris is a database administrator, number 3 by day, Chris is a database administrator for the Louisville Jefferson County Information Consortium, LOJIC. He's supporting the key GIS efforts in Louisville Metro area under Esri's Enterprise Geodatabase and Microsoft Technologies. At night, he brings take it to the streets, passion of grassroots work while trading Esri products for QGIS, open source. Over 11 years, he founded 2 successful grassroots initiatives, a local human trafficking advocacy called Neighbors Keeper, and a national advocacy promoting statutory change called Do Us Part. In these, he has established credibility, built durable strategic partners, and driven mobilization with intelligence-led open source solutions. Some of his richest experiences come from the challenges and successes of these campaigns. Chris enjoys the long game. If asked, what would he rather be doing? He says, draw, paint, compose music, or, train for an Ironman. It is absolutely my pleasure to introduce you to Chris Alldredge, our presenter today. Chris?
All right. Well, thank you, Trisha. I appreciate you moderating today and being graceful. And Danielle, appreciate all of your help getting this started at the top of the hour here. I'm going to share my screen and move into the my presentation and get busy here. I'd like to thank everybody for joining. And I'd like to thank the Geospatial Professional Network for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences um, with the geography of a law. And what I mean by the geography of a law, I think it's kind of important
Yes, we're
to
unable to see your slides. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
We cannot see your slide presentation yet.
Oh, thank you for okay. We'll try again here. Okay, there we go. There's a magic button hidden away at the bottom of the screen called share. All right. Can you see my screen now, just to make sure before I...
Looks good now. Yes.
All right, excellent. I appreciate the heads up on that. I could have just kept on rambling all day long. Okay, yeah. So the name of this segment is the geography of a law, and just to kind of put it out there up front. Well, what do we mean by the geography of a law? I think specifically what we mean is, at least in terms of the organization that I'm going to talk about, is a surface that allows us to understand the temperature check and the potential support level. So the actual temperature check, the actual support level, and then something that we can assess potential support from. And so, it's basically a surface of legislative districts is what it is. And that geography, that surface, we want to do two things with. We want to be able to plan with it, and we want to be able to use it for mobilization. So I kind of wanted to cover that real quick, and spell that out at the top before moving forward. So, as Trisha already said, by day, I work for the Louisville Jefferson County Information Consortium. I won't repeat that information because she did such an eloquent job introducing that. And then by night, this is what I want to talk about. This is my night gig, so to speak. In 2022, I founded an organization called Spousal Consolidation. Do Us Part. How about that for a name? Um, all of our partners and all of our members just refer to us as Do Us Part for obvious good reasons. And so we established this organization in January of 2022. Largely due and a spousal consolidation is really on paper in statute is called a joint consolidation. They're popularly referred to as spousal consolidations, and it is a student loan type. And so in 2022, there was a whole lot of buzz going on about student loan reform, which provided an opportunity for a group of borrowers who have been extremely marginalized and who have operated in a statutory and policy vacuum for almost 2 decades to actually meet each other for the first time. I can tell you that before 2022, at least the borrowers that I know had never, ever known another borrower who had these types of loans. And there are reasons why that is the case. So an opportunity presented itself, and and we took the effort, we took that opportunity and we ran with it while we could. It was time to do some work and reclaim a story. So what is spousal consolidation? Do Us Part. What is Do Us Part? The short answer is we're a grassroots organization that centers the needs and the voices of joint consolidation borrowers. We partner with allies, and we impact statute and policy towards these unlawful loans. And so I want to parse that out a little bit. We are as grassroots as it gets. There's not one paid individual on the entire team. We are not a 501c3. We are a collective of citizens. When we need to act on purchasing, licensing things, we crowdfund and we pull our resources together to do that. We center the needs of joint consolidation borrowers. I think it's going to be evident as I continue to talk why we do that. I think a critical piece here is we partner with allies. When this mission statement was written, it was written at the very onset of the organization being created, felt it very necessary to have a mission statement up front right away to ground ourselves on. Um, and so partnering with allies at that time was absolutely critical because we were the new kid on the block. We had no network. We had no resources. We had no reach. And the only way we could do that was proxy through partners and allies, build relationships, build esteem with other organizations so that we could find a foothold and legitimize ourselves. Well, it was a very important piece to our rubric at the time. And obviously, we want to impact statute and policy, as I described before. These borrowers have been in a statutory and policy vacuum for 2 decades, and it's led to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages for people. Um, I won't go into the laundry list. There's a true need there. So I want to kind of talk about a spouse consolidation, a joint consolidation real quick. I feel like there's a need to maybe understand this problem a little bit better. So that joint consolidation loan program started in 1991. So what that should tell you right away is this is a very old loan program. We're talking the borrowers in this loan program would have been in college in the late 80s or mid 80s. So these are people that have been dealing with the loan for, in some cases, almost 40 years. The program was abandoned in 2006 by the Higher Education Reconciliation Act of 2005. That went into play in 2006. And what it essentially did is, if you see the little snippet down below consolidation, that is the actual language that was taken from the Higher Education Act in 1965. And what that language does is it names that there are people, JCL borrowers, so they are an identified entity in statute, and it identifies a loan program that they participate in statute. Effectively, what HERA did was eradicate all that language, struck it. There no more, nothing but white space where those words were. And in doing so, the Department of Education consequently then scrubbed out all policy and all procedure for handling these loans. The borrowers that had these loans already were not informed and not part of that discussion. Many of the borrowers didn't find out until years later that this had even happened. So it effectively eliminated this program and any regulation around it as a federal loan program. So I think you can see some of the rub or some of the complexities in that. If you notice, this is for married people. They jointly sign on to this consolidation. And I think what's really important, the most critically important information here, I'm trying to find yeah, there we go, is this line here, that they're held jointly and severally liable for the repayment without regard to any subsequent change. So what ended up happening was people got divorced, and then they were trying to manage a loan that both borrowers were responsible for in uncooperative situations, which put them at a high default risk. And so the government and servicers walked away from that risk. But anyone who had these loans was tied to this master promissory note. So what it also did is it allowed, so you have the case of uncooperative divorced people who are now having to collaboratively work on reporting tax information from separate households to maintain payments on IDR. You have abuse victims if you would have told me when I started on this that there would be that things would collide with some of the stuff I had experienced with the human trafficking stuff, I would have told you were crazy. But actually, these loans, in a lot of cases, have been a mechanism for continued abuse. In fact, the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act of 2022 went and amended the definitions of abuse to include financial abuse. So when you see the word unlawful in our mission statement, I think you can start to see where we're coming from on that. We're an extremely, these borrowers were an extremely small percent of the total borrower base. I think let's see, there's 253.8 million adults in the United States. 43.5 million of them have a student loan, and 0.08% of those borrowers are joint consolidation loan borrowers. So when a joint consolidation borrower goes up and they step up to the microphone, it's like that proverbial scene in 2022. It was like this proverbial scene of they step up to the mic and they clear their throat and they're like, and you hear the little empty room echo, and then the door blasts open and 43.5 million people pile in with an entourage of journalists and politicians. For all the things that I've just mentioned, extremely marginalized and without parity to the mainstream, the other 99.02%, because of because of the statutory. All that to say, the thing that we had to do coming out of the gate was we had to be extremely targeted, and that's where some of the mapping is going to tie in. We had to out hustle major advocacies because you're competing for bandwidth. You have to stay constantly in people's face. Mobilization, where we're using maps. Work smarter, not harder. Using maps to work smarter, not harder. Build durable relationships. That's just soft skills. And we had to leave the gate running because essentially we had 10 months to do this in because of some legislative constraints. Now, how are we organizing ourselves to meet our mission? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set up a little background here so you can kind of understand the relevance of the mapping and see what its impact is. So restoring our voice and building a community is one of our primary prongs to achieving that mission. Restoring our voice through collection of structured data and surveys from our membership, and then also tracking our membership across the states and understanding where our people live, mapping application. Restoring our place in statute, mobilizing ourselves to build champions in legislative offices across the United States where our membership live, mapping. There's another tie there. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to restore financial independence. Now, that is a relative term and it can mean a lot of different things. But as we move forward as an organization, we may seek 501c3 status. We may start looking at trying to do cooperative efforts, co-ops on food, medical care, insurance, things that will help some of the people that have been dealing with these loans for 40 years who've not been able to save for retirement, et cetera, and to move forward and see some comfort. So building community, that's our first place we stop. And so I think this is an important thing we need to consider who our members are, because that's the audience that we're using, that's the audience that we're targeting for our mapping solutions during mobilization efforts. So our membership spent 20 years basically in isolation, not knowing another person that shared the same problems, had the same financial decisions to make, etc. When we started and people caught wind, we experienced a 1,428% growth in the first 6 months. Our membership started to really push the bounds of what we were able to administrate and keep up with. 40% of the membership is older than 50 years old. So and privacy is a premium for this age group. I don't think we have a member under the age of 40. I think our oldest member might be 83. So pretty wide spectrum from 40 to 80. We are a digital community. We span 47 states, and I think we have people that are in 3 different countries: Luxembourg, Germany, and I think Haiti. So digital community is necessary to keep people connected and to where we can coordinate. Most of these people are not interested in social media, though. They have a very basic level understanding of the capacity there. So there's some challenges in communication there. And what do we like to say about mapping? Mapping presents a way for us to communicate. So I'm going to try to keep pushing through here. So what was the task at hand? We had to restore statute. And so in January 19th, we launched and we climbed a big, oh, by the way, from our perspective, this is really Capitol Hill. This is the topography of Capitol Hill in terms of trying to push a bill up the hill. That was a term we used a lot. And so what ends up happening is when you're 2 months in and you've got 10 months to get to the finish line, is you're equipping while climbing. You're trying to figure out the course, and then you're also trying to be a Sherpa to someone who's just showing up on the scene. And that is very challenging because you're dealing with the learning curves right alongside. But that also is a great bonding thing. And then in our case, we were dealing with a challenging platform because we had an older generation who were not interested in social media. A lot of people didn't even want to join the group because it was in social media. Some chose to use email, which then diffused our communication, which is also sort of a problem. We had 10 months. By June 15th of 2022, we managed to mobilize efforts to get the bill to pass through the Senate by unanimous consent, which meant that 100% of the Senate voted for the bill to move through with some minor modifications. That bill then moved to the House, went into committee, and then we had to launch another campaign. Now we were searching for new co-sponsors to sign on to the bill in the House. We signed on 22 new co-sponsors, and we brought 14 across the aisle to sign on to sign in favor of the bill. September 21st, 2022 is when that passed. And I don't know if y'all, Earth, Wind, and Fire. There's a lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire getting played on September 21st, 2022. If you know, you know. And then we waited a long 15 days for that to get to the president's desk to sign into law. And so there was actually another campaign to try to reach to the White House to understand what's going on. Because what happens is everything goes black on you, and you're wondering what's going on, and you're leaning on your network to try to understand, to get any morsel of what's going on. And then suddenly you get a call from Senator Warner's office or something. They're like, "Hey, we need your help. And can you get that done by the end of the week?" So it's a whole lot of that. And so what ends up happening is that, campaigns constantly get spun up and they're very reactionary. It's hard. It was very difficult to get ahead. And there's a lot of sticky wickets that get absorbed into the white of the paper in your civics books at school, that happens between the point when a law is signed into play and when it becomes policy, and when it goes to implementation. There's still a lot of work to be done. Getting the law signed into place is, in our case, it was the easy part. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Once it moved from that place to a place where it moved into the halls of cabinets, it became a whole different game and a whole different set of rules. Um, so we moved it along, and where we are right now is we're in that place of making sure the policy is in place and making sure that implementation is happening. So far, I think we just polled membership. 80% of the people who have applied to separate their loans have successfully separated their loans. And I think I missed a pretty important piece here. I want to go back just for a second. The answer to our statutory dilemma was this thing called the Joint Consolidation Loan Separation Act. It was a bicameral bill introduced to the House and to the Senate. And what that did is it offered us a place back into the Higher Education Act of 1965. It reinstated the terms joint consolidation loan and joint consolidation loan borrower. And then what it did is it offered a way to bifurcate the loans, so that victims of abuse could actually get away from their abuser, so that uncooperative divorcees could actually finally separate and not be tied by it. We had married people who remained married only because it was easier to manage this loan, married and emotionally separate, than it was for them to divorce and try to manage it. I think that's kind of telling. So while we're running these campaigns, we're using this intelligence cycle to do to run through all of our actions, to do our planning, to assess what we need to collect. And we started collecting immediately out of the gate with our Who We Are survey, which collects 220 data points, that is a full spectrum, gives a full spectrum signature of what a joint consolidation loan borrower's experience was. And then, of course, we're collecting information from our partners who have inside scoops, who are seeing where tectonic movement might be occurring. And then we're processing that, and we're moving that into some map products. At this point, we're just doing like static choropleth maps and things, and we're creating outreach resources for mobilization. And then what happens is we get to that dissemination phase, and where I feel like the mapping started to play a critical role in our organizational activities it became instrumental in the dissemination and feedback portion of this loop. And then also, of course, in the planning and direction, because we were dealing with membership that was across the geographic space with political boundaries. So that helped us to aggregate and plan there. I'm going to move past this. So here's just kind of an idea of all these different resources and planning devices that we're starting to use in our steering committee meetings, which meet regularly once a week during these campaigns. We're looking at group membership. We're looking at what we know from offices. We're starting to create metrics so that we can look at outreach potential from our base, from our members. And we're looking at how to, and just what the potential is, where the top places are, where we should really focus our efforts. Because again, we're trying to work smarter. We're doing this on Facebook, and we're doing this, as I said, in kind of this reactionary state where everything's been black. And then all of a sudden this timer gets kicked on and you got to go, you got to hustle. So how did we roll through those actions that I just diagrammed? Well, actionably, what we would do is we would go onto Facebook and an email, and we would do a call for action, and um, um, we'd do a call of action, and we would give out guidance, what we need, what was our trajectory, what was the plan, what was the goal, what did we want from it. Um, and here's all the speaking devices that you need. Um, here's your infographics to share. Here's your talking points. Everything was targeted. But it's Facebook. And if anybody's tried to do any coordination on Facebook, then you know that this is what happens. Posts and posts and posts. And that 1,400 and some odd percent growth is crushing you. And people are posting and posting, and your posts, all your important ones, are getting buried. Communication's becoming a real problem. And then people start to emotionally respond, and it turns into a flood. And then your admin comes in and they start watching this, and then we're all freaking out because we've got things to do. And then what ends up happening is um, we have to bump all of our posts. There we go. Got some technical difficulties. Then we got to bump again. We got to keep bumping, and then we got to bump. And then ultimately what we do is, because we can't get control, is we pause it and we lose community. The first thing that we wanted to have in our mission to successfully move it through is we stymie the very platform that we need to have community, because that's the root of our effort. That's where action's happening. That's where the rubber meets the road. So then the silence is deafening. And then this lone new person comes in and says, "Hey, who's my congressional representatives? How do I reach them? What do I do when I reach them?" And then the magic happens. And I'm sure that if a member were to diagram the information flow based on their experience in Facebook, it would look something like this. Where we do have a Legistorm admin, and that's the person that we want people to go to so that they can find out a staffer's information to call, rather than go through the front door and deal with the automated responses and all of that. That was a licensed data set that we purchased so that we could manage our time more effectively and get more punch when we needed it. We have Facebook admins. We have all the connective tissue there, but the fact that Facebook is so rampant and so emotionally charged, it became a very difficult communication device. Enter the solution of a website and a map. And so we're looking at this and we're like, ooh, we can have stasis. We can have a fixed point that people can go to that's not going to tectonically shift underneath their feet every second. And then we started thinking through what are our challenges, and how do we start looking at making a mapping product to address them. And I've mentioned quite a few of these. One that I did mention is that we had that Legistorm admin. That was a person who would would share license data within the organization. We were prohibited from sharing that information online in a map. I think that's an important factor in our mapping solution. And then privacy was a premium. So we had to figure out how to get people to be able to find the information that they needed, entering their own information, rather than us doing a really slick solution would be just look up get their information from their address. We had to honor privacy. So, and we also had started building the website, but it was underutilized. People weren't going there. So we thought, hey, let's build a map and we'll put it on the website drive. And that can be, since that's going to be used for mobilization, and people have to have it, and they need to use it. It'll drive, then it will then drive traffic to the website so that we can utilize that and have a more grounded approach to our organization. And so, like I said, we don't have a lot of money. So what did we do? We used QGIS. I had a lot of experience with it. It has been a very performant piece of software, and it has so much functionality. And we needed something very simple for all the reasons that I've expressed before. And so the QGIS to web plugin within QGIS was going to be our answer. And then, of course, we had to purchase a web hosting service, and we went with Ionos, which was fairly inexpensive and fairly easy to use and set up. And then I want to talk about the data because I described targeting. We pulled census data, obviously, that was our surface, congressional districts. And then what we did is we conflated the Senate information to the congressional districts since they overlap. And then so we would only have one district layer to worry with. And then we pulled information from congress.gov and GovTracks about voting records so that we could start to create a profile of the various offices and their stance and their ideological leanings. And so we started to tabulate ideology score based on those voting records and taken from, and actually GovTracks produces an ideology score. They track all the signings of bills that representatives do, and then they quantize that and put it on a scale from that points to left-leaning to right-leaning. Those are the polls. And then we had our Legistorm data, which allowed us to get directly through the door and access staffers in the office rather than front-end web forms. And then, of course, we used our own membership as we mobilized them over these 10 months. The feedback we got was always put into an evaluation process that would span all of our intelligence cycles so that we could evaluate and integrate at all stages of the game. So I feel like I spent a long time talking about our woes. I want to shift gears and move over to the solutions. Hopefully you can still see my screen. And so what we did is we created this as our geography of a law. Can someone give me a thumb up if you can see that? I want to make sure I'm still sharing that screen. Okay, got some thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we wanted something very simple. This is a leaflet map that is produced from QGIS, and we wanted to do two things with this map. We wanted to be able to use it in our steering committee meetings so that we could plan and organize our thoughts around what was happening on the ground. This map does have a maintenance cycle as we complete a campaign and we gather more information. We reintegrate that into those scores, the temperature check score, which is what's driving the coloration on the map here. Obviously, red is hot. That's an office that is very interested in supporting. If it's cold, then it's blue. They're not as interested. Got work to do there. And then if it's gray, we don't know. They're either a new member of Congress or and likely that's what's happened. So it kind of just gives us a quick rundown, and you can click on these, and what you find is through our tabulations that this is the temp check is cold in that district. The voting trend is towards the right with a ideological score of 7.8. This is Representative Stefanik, which makes sense. But we want people that this is the gap we really needed to fill. We had our information about ourselves. We could produce the products and get it in people's hands. But we needed the people to be able to take those products and put them in a context. So the Surface not only produces the ability for people to find out who their representatives are and answer that fundamental question that I was raised earlier in the presentation, but then they also get a chance to look at some of the background of the office that they're going to be approaching, so they can customize their message, so they can tailor it in a language that's going to help them move their agenda across the desk, and they're being our members during mobilization. So some things about this map. We originally presented it like this. It was a link to this map. And so we had to custom build in some directions down here at the bottom. You can never have enough directions for a group of people that that really don't care to be involved with technology any more than they have to. So you're constantly doubling down on instructions and any kind of guidance you can place. So that was an important piece that we had to put in here. And this was customized here. And then one thing I do want to point out is there's this map layers, and you see here we have all these regions. One of the things that we ran into technically with the leaflet maps was that if you start putting in a very resolute piece of data, so like these boundaries have a lot of nodes and vertices, the leaflet map doesn't like it. It's too much data. Leaflet wants something very light packets. And what we found is when this thing's output to a file location on your computer, there's a little data folder. And then all this is converted to a GeoJSON. And you can see what the sizes of those GeoJSON files are. And what we found was that the GeoJSON files were pretty large. And the happy balancing point was rather than generalizing the line work and running risk that a person would click the map and accidentally be put into the wrong jurisdiction, we broke these jurisdictions down into better, more efficient sizes. And so each of these in the file in the background is about 6 megs. That seemed to be the balance point to get us a decent response level with the map. And then we wanted it very simple. We wanted them to be able to put their address in or put their GPS location in, and then click the map and get the information that they need. So if we do this, get that little message, and it takes it a second. And then here we go. So there I am. I've been located. That looks correct. I click the map, and I get the information that I need. And so what this gives me is it gives me my representative's information. It gives me both senators' information, because you can reach out to both senators. Generally, generally representatives don't like you reaching out to them if you are not a constituent directly in their district. So you get and then you get a summarization of what the intel is that we have collected from congress.gov, the open source stuff, and the stuff that we know from our previous campaign experience. And so what we did is we put this stuff into a table, and then we made this info result come up to where it was referencing those tabular components. So that's a variable in the background on this, so that it'll auto-populate that stuff. And so now, not only do you understand kind of where they are on the topic of the bill, but you have an idea of what committees they sit on that may be important, why you may want to win that office over. because if they sit on health, education, and labor, then they have direct influences on some of the legislative affairs of like the Department of Education. And so there's more direct contact and influence there. So these are the kinds of information that we put in here. And then if you remember my squiggly mess, we wanted to connect these folks to our Legistorm administrator so they could get information on how to actually talk to somebody in the office. If you remember, that's licensed information that we can't put out publicly. We can share it within our organization. So we give them some boilerplate that they can go and copy and paste. And now the Legistorm admin has all the information that they need to be able to give them the information they need to mobilize and reach that office and make meaningful contact. And then we remind them that, hey, when you're done, make sure you report what your outcomes were and report if you think that the temperature in the office has changed. And so we directly connect them to a feedback form where they can start reporting the temperature. And then right next to the form, we tell them report cold if these conditions, report warm if these conditions. So I feel like the map, when presented this way, sorry, I feel like the map, when presented this way, there was still a little bit of a gap, and so did the steering committee. We felt like they still need a little bit more cheat sheet. They still need a little bit more. We don't want them guessing, because the more they're guessing, the less they're mobilizing. So we made a move to move this into the actual campaign website, where now it's kind of just a seamless part in an iframe. And we can put a cheat sheet below there so that when they click the pop-up, there's a little bit of lag on my end today. This should come up here. And of course, if it doesn't, you can click here and I think it opens. Yeah, it opens in its own tab. I have slowness on my side. I've been experiencing some this afternoon. Yeah, okay. So the idea here is that we build in more support and make this as guestless as possible. So this map solution, we wanted it to be a seamless solution that worked between the map, and that it was consistent with the messaging and the workflow spelled out by the campaign. And so I feel like we found a good, simple, transparent solution to do that. And it's been a bedrock solution. We've continued to use this approach pretty successfully through subsequent campaigns. I think at that point, I'm just going to stop and leave some breathing room and maybe some question room.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, this is a great example of an NGO way for NGOs to use mapping, and I love that you used QGIS. Will everybody give Chris a round of applause virtually? All right. If you have any questions, you can put it into the Q&A. That's a great way for us to manage the questions and make sure that your question isn't missed. Danielle, can you tell if we have any questions? Okay, none at the moment. All right. Anyone? We've got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Well, I have one. Knowing that you come from an Esri shop, how easy was it to pick up on QGIS?
I feel like QGIS is pretty easy to pick up. I've been using it in side projects for probably about 10 years. When I first started picking it up, it was at a different place in its development. It was very open source worldish, where you had to go hunting and pecking for help in little chat, GIS chat. But it's been developed so much over the last 10 years that there's a lot better online support for it. There's a lot more formalized tutorials for the software. They have cleaned up the interface, the geoprocessing tools. So if you're an Esri shop, you know them as geoprocessing tools. That library that also exists in GIS, and that was a very hard thing to navigate at first. It seemed very cryptic, and the UI was it was harder to understand. But that's all been refined quite a bit too. So I feel like someone who's Esri shopper, who's well enough, who understands the concepts well enough, could make a very easy transition to QGIS.
Thank you, Chris. That's very insightful. And I've never used it, but now that I've seen your presentation, I'm definitely interested in trying it out. It looks like we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
Let's see. This is from Stephen. How does understanding the distribution of the people that are interested in this topic, example mapping, and those who do/don't support it, change the overall approach to pushing forward both the legislation and the community of support?
Repeat that question to me.
Okay. How does understanding the distribution of the people that are interested in this topic and those who do or don't support it change the overall approach to pushing forward both the legislation and the community of support?
I think understanding who your supporters are and understanding who the potential supporters are, it buys you more co-sponsorship and more discussion inside the chamber. The mechanical process of moving the law through the Senate and through the rules of the House, they are what they are, and it'll move according to those wheels. I think for us, it was a matter of finding supporters or recruiting support. At 0.08% of the student loan borrower world, you're an unknown. I can tell you 99.9% of the offices you're going to call have no idea even what you're talking about. It takes some education. And then I'm hoping that I'm answering this question. So it was absolutely critical to try to understand the support level so that we can move it, because we were also operating with thin resources, and we were chasing the train, and we were up against a time crunch. So we had to work smarter. So really understanding this stuff was about prioritization and figuring out where the quick wins could be and piling up as much support as we possibly could through quick wins. And so we have a map that's called the Sweet 16. I mean, here you've got, 200 and some odd potential offices, but we use this information to streamline our efforts and work smarter and find key offices to help move the bill through. Because there's conversations that are going on in committees. There are conversations that are going on in the hallway between co-sponsors and other folks in the chamber. So the more interest we could foster the better we felt our chances would be to move this stuff through the mechanics. I hope that helps. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Chris. And then they did ask for the website to be put in the chat. And it looks like Wendy did add that for us.
Awesome.
Let's give Chris one more round of applause, and then we're going to have some a wrap up with some announcements. So
I appreciate the
Chris.
opportunity to present today.
So if you stop sharing, then I'll go ahead and share, and I'll share some events that are coming up in GPN.
Yeah, let's see here. There you go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay. We had questions. That was great. Thank you for your questions today. And the NGO, this is something the board actually asked the PEC, the Professional Education Committee, to focus on. And I think we've done a really great job of bringing presentations in from NGOs throughout the year. And if you still like seeing NGO presentations, let us know. That's always something that we can continue to bring more of to you as the audience. Upcoming webinars, we have the Portraits of Resilience, Enriching Resilient and Vulnerability Metrics with Mapped Qualitative Data in Historical Marginalized Communities. That's November 14th. And then there's a MAPI Q&A on November 17th. Hope you can join us. We also have some GPN programs. We have the GIS Leadership Academy. That's December 8th through the 12th in Savannah, Georgia. Two of my team members are attending that, and I know they'll have a great time. Cal GIS is in January, as you can see, 20th through the 23rd in Redlands. We have a LEAP conference in March, the 3rd through the 5th, and that's hosted virtually. Hopefully you can join us for that. GIS Val Tech Conference, that's in Mobile, Alabama, and that's March 30th through April 2nd. Don't miss out on the GPN's New Learning Annex. That has been a huge push for this, and it's been very well received so far. We'd love for you to go out and check out the annex. And then don't forget to stay connected. We'd love for you to join us. If you're not a member, please look into being a member of the GPN. And also, I am the chair of the PEC. We'd love to have some new, fresh members. We'd love for you to join us. So hope everyone had a great webinar.
Excuse me for interrupting. We had a question in the chat that I wanted to make sure we answered from Cassidy. It says, I am volunteering with a campaign and I am connecting more and more with people running for office in Texas and US Congress. Is there a way you recommend sharing this data and explaining the findings from your research with candidates?
Yeah, and I would be, yeah, I'd be happy to like connect via email or something if you have some questions and we can kind of have more of a pointed discussion. Yeah, sure, we could do that. I can be reached, I think, on my presentation. I'll put it in chat here. I'm putting into chat an email that if you have questions about any of this, I'm happy to answer. If you have technical questions, you want to talk about leaflet maps or how we overcame some of those little constraints that I was identifying or some of the customizations, happy to talk about that too.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.